Let's break down whose tax plan is going to be better for you based on how much money you make. Trump or Harris? I just made a video on this yesterday for the average American family, but then I got so many comments asking for what if I'm single and what if I make this much, so I figured the best thing to do is just make a video about each income level and how it's going to break down for that group of people. We're going to look at people who make under 50K, between 50K and 100K, between 100 and 200, 200 to 500, and then 500 plus. And before we jump in, this is tax code only. This is not including Trump's effect because of tariffs or Harris's effect because of what she's doing with housing or healthcare. Strictly tax code only. Before we jump in, I always get questions about my sources. This is from the University of Pennsylvania Wharton School of Business, of which Donald Trump is an alumni. They have a department that's specifically focused on looking at government policy and how it affects people like you. So that's where these numbers come from. And how this chart works is here's how much money people make and here's what's expected in 2026 based on the policy of each people. So we'll have Trump and we'll have Harris and we'll break down how it affects each income group. Let's start with people making under 50K, and let's start with Donald Trump. So Donald Trump, in these first two lines, you take a look right here, it's not a major benefit to folks who make under 50K. It's less than $1,000 difference between today and 2026. Whereas for that same group, in Kamala Harris, we have a major difference. She's going to give you about a plus $2,000 benefit versus what Donald Trump's tax plan is going to do. So when it comes to people under 50K, unquestionably we start out with advantage Kamala Harris. Now, if we're looking at people who make between 50 and 100K, we're kind of looking at the third line here where the average out is about $81,000. You're looking at about a $1,700 increase between what you'd expect today versus what you'd expect in 2026 under Donald Trump's plan. So for Kamala Harris in that same group, you're seeing about $2,100 versus $1,700 for Trump. So a smaller advantage, but an advantage nevertheless for Kamala Harris. So pretty much the bottom line is if you make under $100,000 a year, Kamala Harris is going to get you more money than Donald Trump will. And yes, while the difference is a couple $1,000s, for folks who make less than $50,000, even less than $100,000, that $2,000, $1,000, it definitely is felt more than folks who are living up in this echelon making millions who wouldn't even notice the difference. So now if we're looking at people who make between $100,000 and $200,000 a year, we're kind of looking in this fourth and fifth line, somewhere in between there, and you're starting to see where Trump is really starting to make inroads here. Now, you're going to notice a trend that's going to start coming up, is that the more money you make, the more benefit you're going to get under Donald Trump. And that trend starts right here. Now, Kamala Harris isn't losing you money by any stretch of the mind. The difference really is about like $1,000 to $3,000 depending how close you get to 200K in income. So if you're closer to 200K, Trump will probably get you about plus $3,000 on the year, whereas if you're closer to 100K, maybe plus $1,000, a little bit less. It's going to depend. But in the end, Kamala Harris is still making you more money than you're going to make today in 2026, but Trump will get you a little bit more. So in the people who make 200 to 500K, this is really the moment where Trump starts to shine, because we're looking around this line here where you're in the middle between these two folks and you're seeing about a $9,000 advantage versus today. That's where Trump really starts to show you his tax code working for the wealthy as opposed to the folks who are living under $100,000 a year. Now with that same group, Harris does a decent job. She's not giving you a ton of money like Trump is, but she's still giving you some money because she's not trying to target folks who are making, you know, in the $200,000 to $500,000 zone. She's really targeting the upper echelon, which we're about to get to here. So when we look at this upper echelon of folks, we understand right away what Donald Trump is trying to do. He's trying to line the pockets of the very wealthy in the hopes it'll trickle down to these people that he's pretty much neglected with his tax plan. And you can see Kamala Harris is doing quite the opposite. She is taking from these folks and taxing them more heavily to funnel that money back into the people who inhabit the pretty much under $100,000 income bracket. But the critical thing to note here is that that taking from concept doesn't happen until you make over $591,000 a year. Now, I think this is really the difference between Republican politics and Democratic politics. Republicans think, no, you got to line the pockets of the wealthy so they can trickle it down to the lower class. And then Harris's approach is, no, we need to ensure that the lower class can make more money, guaranteed, because these folks already have a ton of money. They don't need more guaranteed money from the tax code. So in the end, Trump's policy essentially comes down to like a trust me bro, I'm just going to give a bunch of money to wealthy people and they're going to trickle it down to you, people who make under 100K. But Harris's plan is essentially going, no, don't trust him and the wealthy people. Just let me build a tax code that guarantees you the money that he's promising you in the back end. Which to me makes it abundantly clear that if you're voting strictly on the issue of who is going to put more money in my pocket based on their tax code and you make under $100,000 a year, Harris is your vote, there's no question. But if you're a wealthier person and you really just want to make more money and that's what your vote is for, Trump is your guy. That's how it all breaks down.